he doesn't have a good feeling about it either after what just took place. And as he said that, seconds after he said that, and we go to put up, bellies to ground, face to ground, to really hunker down and get better concealment and cover the best we can. It was like an imaginary lawnmower had just started to mow the grass around us, or a weed whacker. But it wasn't an electronic or grass cutting device. There were bullets and the snaps of the bullets going overhead as we're hunkered down. And it's coming, damn near like 360 degrees around us at this point. And I remember the reconnaissance team leader screaming something. He's fall back, or I don't know exactly what he said, break contact. I don't know what he said, but we all got up. I can't recall what he said. I forgot. But it caused we all got up, and I remember running back to this hole that I had initially saw walking in to our blocking position, these little craters in the ground. I'm like, look back at Pemberton. I'm like, dude, if anything, bad happens, shit hits the fan, like we're coming back to these holes, man. He shakes his head, he nods. And that's exactly where we went when all the gunfire erupted. We just, booked it to the nearest little hole that we could find in the ground. And we dove in it. Not all of us could fit. It was like 3 initially. And Pemberton was on top of me. I was on top of the reconnaissance team leader. Pemberton eventually rolled out. And the reconnaissance medic and communications guy, they're like in a star-like formation pattern with their, spread eagle, legs wide open, arms open, pressed as flat as they can on their back on the ground as these bullets are flying all around us. And we do the best we can to lay down suppressive fire. I see a machine gun team setting up on a rooftop, 3 of them, 3 guys, and I engaged 2 of them. The third one got away, and Pemberton, he's engaging targets. There's not much the reconnaissance team lead guy can do. The hole is really small, and there's not much that the other 2 guys outside the hole can do. They're pinned down, like I said, like spread eagle, back pressed as hard as they can to the ground to become the earth. Very accurate fire. Few minutes go by. I'm not sure the exact time. I know total time we were in the hole for 3.5 hours before we were eventually rescued. You can call it rescued, reinforced. But during that time in the hole, all the machine gun fire kind of subsided for a second. And then all of a sudden you just started to hear these individual cracks and booms and very, very accurate fire. The ground in front of you would explode just a few inches away. And I'm looking at Pemberton, and the ground would explode, a few inches from his arm and a few inches from his face. And it's happening all the way around us. Just coming from one direction. Bullets are, coming at me, at the reconnaissance team lead when he popped his head up, going at the guys, spread eagle in the field, and also focused at Pemberton and me. But during that time is when I realized I went back during the staying with the Marines or being with the Marines, planning this whole thing out. They're like, hey, dude, there's a Chechen sniper that allegedly works that area. And he's been around since like the Soviet days, and he has X amount of kills, which is quite a few kills, but I kind of brushed it off like, whatever. I'm the guy right now, very, very cocky. I was very cocky sniper, but I was also quickly humbled during this operation and during the engagement with that sniper, the Chechen sniper, being pinned down in this hole. I never felt so one-sided. Normally for us, it's a one-sided gunfight. We're dominating. It's where the enemy even knows we're there. Their fire is not even accurate. It's not much of a threat. It's scary, but it's not, too concerning. I always knew, I believe that definitively we were going to go home that night or after the operation. I didn't feel like that after or during this operation. So after we establish, hey, this is sniper fire, I deduce it to it's the Chechen that the Marines, warned us about before going in there. We start to, me and Pemberton, get a better feel for where this sniper is, and that required us to, expose ourselves briefly and get back down before the sniper engaged us, or send rounds to where we believe the sniper was engaging and wait for a response. It was a mix of both of, those tactics. And eventually using the snap bang theory, where you listen for the crack of the bullet, as it passes by, and the boom of the rifle. And it's like the judging the distance between lightning and thunder, just at a different intervals, I guess, different intervals, and it's only accurate up to a certain distance. I'm using that snap bang theory. I'm like, well, he's probably around 500 yards away. Where would I be if I were this distance away? And I figure out, or I pinpoint this location to where I believe the sniper's at. It looks like where I would be. It's got a nice messed up exterior. He's probably shooting from within this building using what we call like a loophole, where he's backed away into a room shooting outside the hole. That way we really can't engage him. I'm not sure. I believe he's in this building. And meanwhile, small arms fire is starting to pick up, and it's starting to, but it's not as intense as it was in the beginning. Although it is picking up and still like not necessarily a 360, but it's like a 250, 230, 260 degree like ambush, and the fire is getting more effective, and the enemy is also closing in on us. I can see the fighters with their weapons, AK-47s, skirting in between buildings and doing the best I can to lay down suppressive fire with the SR-25 and hit who I can, which was not many. It was more so just used as suppressive fire. And the enemy, they're within an unsafe distance to where, it gets concerning. And I look at Pemberton and I look at the reconnaissance team lead, and I'm like, dude, if, I'm not getting my head chopped off. This gets too close. We need a grenade. Long story short, we need a grenade. Does anyone have a grenade? I didn't have one. Pemberton did not have one. The reconnaissance team leader did. So the plan was we were going to pull this grenade if the enemy became too overwhelming and closed in on our position. And I say that because the enemy was measured in a few yards. Pemberton shot someone like 20 yards away, armed with an AK-47 from the hole we were in. I can hear the screams of the enemy saying Allah Akbar, and I can hear the smacks of their sandals smacking the ground at points. So I didn't want my parents to have to see that. I didn't want to have to live through it, of course. But, having your image forever known for being that guy, or, posted online is something that I didn't want my, family to have to see. And none of us did. So that was the plan, to pull the pin on the grenade. We were going to dive on it as they close in and blow ourselves up if we have to. Meanwhile, during this entire time, we're calling in for air support. We're calling in for the guys from the platoon to come and, help us out any way that they possibly can. We asked for bombs to be dropped on various locations. We asked for bombs to be dropped on our location, and they were all denied. The rules of engagement at the time were just not the same or the way they used to be. Under Obama's rules of engagement, we were not allowed to have anything with more than like a 0.01 or 0.1% collateral damage on, a building that was not involved in the one they were targeting. So bombs being dropped were out of the question, and the platoon of Rangers had a fight going on that end. It was not an easy extraction of the target, the high value target they were going after. They encountered some ambushes and enemy fighters at their location. So everybody was just tied up, and rules of engagement would not allow certain things, and enemies closing in. We were essentially told, like, hey, you have to fight your way out. Ranger up, you know? And as things were getting like just the most nightmarish, hellish place you could be on earth at that time was in that hole. And all hope was lost. I've already accepted, you know, what was about to come. I made my peace with who I made peace with, fist pound Mike Pemberton and say my goodbyes and tell my family that, hey, you know, I was not, you know, a coward. I was not a bitch, man. We fought. And if whoever made it out, but luckily it did not go down that way. Benjamin Kopp, a friend of mine in Ranger Battalion, he was with that platoon of Rangers who were going to go take out or capture the high value target. He was a machine gunner at the time. And for that platoon, they heard our calls and they weren't really caught up with the assault. They were like in a blocking position of their own. And they decided to, him and his machine gun team decided to get up and make their way over to us, which was like a click plus away, 1,000, 2,000, like it was a good distance away, running gunfight. They're getting shot at, you know, damn near the entire way through, the entire time making their way to us. I did not know that at the time. I thought all hope was lost, and until I saw a B-2 stealth bomber fly overhead, and I'm like, oh, that's a UFO, and wow, I'm about to get abducted. It would have been better off being inside that hole, but no, it's just a B-2 bomber making a pass over to show like a show of force. But over my shoulder, I see it looked like the Roadrunner kicking up dust, like a train of them. And it was Benjamin Kopp and his machine gun team coming in to help with the, you know, our extraction, getting us out of that hole. And I'll never forget that imagery, that sight to see, and us bounding back to them, getting to Benjamin Kopp and asking for water from his backpack, his assault pack, and drinking half, giving the other half to Pemberton. I'll never forget that. But they saved our life, man. They saved our life that day. They saved our life. And 5 minutes after that, it was the moment that changed my life completely and why I left Ranger Battalion after my contract was up, which was after that deployment. Yeah, after we get picked up by Benjamin Kopp and his machine gun team, I engaged one more target off of Pemberton's shoulder into that little courtyard where the original huddle had taken place. Somebody popped out with an AK from around that building corner, took him out, and we proceeded on down this little narrow gravel dirt road to where the main element was being held up. They had actually, during this whole, you know, extraction, Benjamin Kopp and all that stuff, the assault team made it into the objective building. They captured a few individuals, and one of the individuals ended up being the high value target. And they were pinned up or held up inside this, what we call the safe haven, this little safe house. They took the family, put them off to the side, and kind of like they hunkered into this family's house until we could reconsolidate and figure out a plan from there. We did not expect to be in an all day long gunfight to that magnitude, especially as we're making our way down to the safe haven to meet up with the platoon. I decide to take a left right on this little ravine area. And behind that ravine is a tree line. Looking back at it to this day, I wish I would have taken the element. I was leading us out into the tree line, as opposed to like skirting on the outside, silhouetting yourself. It was, I don't know, tired, 5 days awake. Who knows what it was? Bad call on my decision. We were just trying to hurry up to get to the main element, the main assaulting platoon. And I took the left, and as I take the left, walking along the upper portion of the embankment before there's a ravine, I didn't know how deep it was or anything like that. And the tree line's right behind it. We were ambushed. I guess the Taliban had this entire environment was like designed to fight and uphold a really long, sustained gunfight. They had an underground network, and those little holes or something like that. They had not artificial, but they put something on top of it and laid the natural vegetation on it. And these guys were in the ground, and they popped up and started shooting in near ambush. And all of the reconnaissance team, me, Pemberton, and Benjamin Kopp's assault or machine gun team, we just I dove headfirst into the ravine and didn't know how deep it was or anything like that. It was just a near ambush. You could see it was, measured within feet. And falling in, catch my bearings, we're returning fire. I look up and I can see Kopp with his leg up on the embankment laying down suppressive fire with his M4. And a few other of his guys laying down suppressive fire. I'm catching my bearings again, and Pemberton, he's trying to get eyes on, but he's got a bolt action. We're soaking in water at this point. The reconnaissance element, they're doing what they can to engage targets. And I popped my head up eventually and was able to catch or get eyes on a couple of targets and began to engage them. Danger close, and a few were not too far beyond that. And it was a really, really intense gunfight. During the gunfight, I heard what sounded like a loud M4, unsuppressed, like shooting right next to my head and right next to my ear. I'm like, I go to push somebody away, like, dude, back up a little bit. You're right. I thought the barrel was, inches away from my head. And I looked to go push this, person away, and no one's there. It was bullets snapping by my head and impacting on the rear side of the embankment. If it were, an inch or two to the left, if I had been an inch or two to the left, I wouldn't be here today. I moved to the right a little bit, or not a little bit, a few feet to where I could. And this knee high, at some points in some locations of the ravine, it was like chest high water. As I'm, going to go up to engage more targets and do the best I can to even, lay down suppressive fire, I hear the weirdest, sounded like a ruler smacking a pillow. Two pops, smacks of something. And it caught my attention enough, to where it stood out. And, not even a second after I heard those two pops, I heard Kopp screaming. He's screaming, I'm hit, and, I'm hit. He's cussing and whatever you would expect when someone gets hit. I look over at him, and now he's like in the water, laying down on his back. He's looking down on his leg, and I can see that it's obviously his femoral artery that is hit, because it's spraying arterial blood spray, and it's spraying, 10, 15 feet into the air, or across over the embankment and onto the grass, onto the field where we were being engaged from. As he goes down, the medic immediately, Doc Melvin, immediately runs over to, render aid, give aid to Kopp, who's hit and crying out for help. He gets there, and in no time, it's like complete disregard for his life. The way he, just immediately took action and ran over to assist Kopp while we were all pinned down with really, good, accurate fire, suppressive fire, accurate fire, incoming fire. As he's working on him, I can start to hear, that familiar single one crack bang that we encountered pinned down in the hole. We had never, got the sniper, never, put a bullet through him, or believe so. We put it, in his location and around his location, the same as he was doing with us. But started getting engaged by him again, and it was hard to find a good spot to where I'm not being engaged. And one of the recce guys is like, dude, I'm not getting hit over here, come over here. The enemy sniper is not engaging me. So I go over to this little location where he's at, a down tree, down dead, fallen tree branch or whatever. And as soon as I raise up, I start we both now start getting engaged again, or I start getting engaged again. He pushes me away a little bit. He's like, no, dude, he's after you, or, whatever. Incoming fire, accurate fire. I go over to the PL while all this is happening. Go over to the PL, and who's with us now in the ravine, and a PL's platoon leader for that platoon that we were attached to. And I'm saying he was over with cop and the medic pinned down in the ravine. And I'm like, hey, we need to get our, it's like 300 meters to this safe haven, the safe house, the place where, everybody was located. And I go to, I'm talking into his ear. I have him grabbed by his body armor, the strap over his shoulder. I pull him in, and I'm talking into his ear, and not talking, I'm screaming, shouting into his ear. There's a lot of, we're shooting back, we're being shot at, a lot of noise going on. Cops screaming, he's going in and out of consciousness, a lot of stuff going on. And as I'm talking to him, I feel a wet slap of, felt like warm water slapping my face, and immediately followed by his body, just falling limp like a sack of rocks or whatever, just falling in out of the grasp of my hand. And I look down at his chest, and I can see what appears to be like hamburger meat hanging out of his chest. And around a single bullet had went over my ear and into the PL's chest, right above his where his plates were at on his body armor. Pemberton immediately, I'm in shock at this point. I go down, I'm looking at him, completely in shock. I've never encountered that before. I just was, I was tired of it. It felt like I had given up, not given up, but I was just tired of being shot at. Looking at Pemberton, who's now jumped over to render, give aid to the PL by, damn near shoving his hand inside of the PL's chest to stop the bleeding. Medic, one of the reconnaissance medics, he goes over to help the PL. He's stuffing the wound with gauze and getting him squared away. And the PL is like, Irv, get this son of a bitch, man. Get him, referring to the sniper. And I'm like, roger that, sir. I got tears in my eyes. I'm choking up. I'm, PL's hit, cops hit. I didn't know it at the time. I had heard over comms that another one of our snipers who was attached to that platoon was hit in his ankle. He had suffered a small arms fire. A single round went through his ankle and took him out of the fight. So we got 3 guys down, and 2 of them are down inside the ravine with me, and the water changing colors from that dark brown to a darker brown as the PL's blood and cop's blood starts to fill the stream, and tasting that like wet pennies or a sack of, or putting pennies in your mouth, and the iron metallic flavor taste. My clothes being soaked in, water and blood. I have pictures of that as we came out of the hole or out of the ravine, and very clear visual of what we had to go through. So yeah, as everyone's being worked on, we finally, make the decision. We have to get out of here. We cannot be pinned down in this ravine. We have to leave now. We have been there long enough. Minutes is way too long. And I volunteered to pick up the rear. I figure if anybody's going to come down to engage us again inside the ravine, at least my plates would stop some of it. A body would stop, a bullet from hitting my friends who were being drug out. Cops is on this like a makeshift stretcher, and him being told to like, dude, hold your breath as we're going under, so, for cover in the ravine, and pulling him back up, and him being in and out of consciousness and completely as pale, as white as a sheet of paper. it all started to take a toll, and I volunteered to take up the rear. And Pemberton, he carried Cop's bag, and we let out, or we start to exit that ravine into the little safe haven area. Once we make it to this little portion of the ravine to where we could hop over the out of the ravine and run across the 50 feet or so to this home. Me and Pemberton, we move forward over the formation, crawling over our guys, and we're going to be the first ones out. That way, when we get inside the compound, we can get on the roof and start to provide overwatch for the guys and our wounded coming out the ravine beneath us. We do that, and as soon as we get out, I remember like World War III atomic bomb level gunfire erupting right over our heads, and I immediately drop down, and Pemberton thinks I'm hit, so he comes over, he grabs me, and he's like dragging me to the compound, and I'm like, dude, get down. What are you doing? Get down. He's like, no, those are our guys. And I look up over his shoulder, and I can see a support by fire line of machine gunners and machine gun team leaders with their M4s laying down a complete wall of lead, and it shook the earth. It shook the earth. We make entry into the compound. We're met by a first sergeant and the rest of the platoon. I can see the sniper C.W. who's shot in the ankle, and he's up against the wall tending to his wounds. And I immediately look back and I tell Mike Pemberton that, hey, dude, we're going to get up on this rooftop, climb this ladder that was already provided for us, and we're going to start to lay waste to anybody who's out here to do us wrong, pretty much. And we were given that order as well. Anybody who posed a threat in that area that we deemed a threat or saw as a threat, we were, told to engage. And that's exactly what we did. Broad daylight. We're at like hour number 5 or 6 or 7. I don't know at this point. I know it lasted 9 hours, whatever, 9 hours. It's documented. You can look it up on Google, or I'll provide it in the comments. Who knows? But yeah, we stay up there, and like I said, I went in with 210 rounds, and I'm like down to 2 mags at this point. One's out of commission, full of dirt and all types of junk and whatever. Start to engage targets with the machine gunners up on the rooftop, and we facilitate the extraction of the wounded and the guys who were still inside the ravine. And eventually medevacs were called in. They came and overwatched those guys, and watching those guys all get, packed on, and wishing Cop the best as they all left and got on the helicopter to leave. We stayed there, and it was the chain of command. They were debating whether or not we were going to stay overnight to finish taking out all the bad guys in that area. Luckily, that did not happen. It was what it was. Either way, it was plenty of targets, to hundreds of targets to engage at that point in time. Seeing guys being dropped off by literally in van loads of terrorists, enemy fighters being dropped off to come fight us, the Taliban, whatever you want to call them. Bad guys with guns. And luckily, we didn't have to make that, or we didn't settle on that decision to remain overnight. And instead, we decided to have the Marines come get us out. There came a point in time during being up on the rooftop, and, targets were danger close within 20 feet from the compound, and me and the snipers up on the rooftop, and the recce guys, reconnaissance guys, having to engage targets as close as like 20 feet away, some closer. I saw some engaged closer than that by our first sergeant. There was a point in time during that we were given the warning, hey, this could go really bad, and if you got a knife, get your knife ready, whatever, it could get bad. We were, dangerously low on ammo. I'm down to a mag at this point, but luckily the call was given to the Marine Corps to come help us out with the extraction. They could not go in the area with anything less than a brigade at the time. So we were, SOL. at that point. We had to run to them. The best they could do was park like close to a mile away, mile away from the objective, and we were going to have to run out to them. And that's exactly what we did. I volunteered to lead us the entire element, all the guys out, and Pemberton was going to pick up the rear, and we were just going to book it, hightail it out to the Marines that were awaiting for us in already jam-packed Humvees. You know, you got 35 plus guys now that we have to, you know, stuff sardine style in these Humvees on top of the Humvees to get back to the compound, the Marine outpost, before we fly back to our compound, less than an hour's flight away. So yeah, I let us out and we make it onto the Humvees where the Marines were at, and being offered water and a cigarette, and all in all, I left with 6 rounds. I had 6 rounds left in my magazine. Pemberton was down to like a handful, a few rounds, and some guys had 0, no rounds at all, borrowing mags and rounds from, you know, guys who had some to spare. The combat cameraman, he had to put down his camera. The guy who took all the pictures that you can see of me and Pemberton and the entire firefight, he had to put down his camera at one time and pick up a gun from one of the wounded. So it was an eye-opener. It was something I had wished for my whole life, to reach that pinnacle level and, you know, get my Carlos Hathcock moment and my special operations gunfight, that the kind you see in movies. And I finally had a chance to get that, and I didn't like it. It was not like the movies, I can tell you that. Of course not. But no, seeing the devastation that we saw and losing friends. Cop ended up dying about a week after being shot. So he made it back to the States or eventually died. But after that, it was the determining factor. I was asked, are you going to re-enlist? I had a few months left on the contract, or months left. And no, I knew at that moment that, one, I wasn't mentally right after that. It was one of the most hellacious gunfights I had ever been in. I had never seen death or stared death that close in the face up until that point. I had been in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of direct action raids and firefights. You average 100, let's say 100 per 90 days. And I've done 6 deployments. You can do the math. I've done a lot of direct action raids where you're in, imminent threat, if you want to call it that. Sometimes I didn't feel that way, but it's at the time of war. But I never felt the way I felt, as opposed to, that day, that night and day leading into that day. I never felt that amount of devastation or fear or staring death in the face. So that's why I decided to get out. I had, a wife at the time, and I wanted to start a family. And how many more aces in the deck, before you eventually run out or find the joker? And I felt like my time was nearing an end anyways. So I called it quits. I don't regret anything. I don't look back at it and say, man, I wish I didn't do that, or I wish I didn't have to live through that. But I don't feel any of that. I appreciate all of those moments, and it brought me to where I am today and gave me the opportunities that I have today. So I'm thankful for all of it. But yeah, I guess in a nutshell, that is my journey through the special operations. Reason why I got in, I guess, and more so why I decided to leave the special operations community. It was based solely off of literally like that mission. That's why everybody has their breaking point. I guess that was mine. Kudos to those who haven't found theirs yet, but I'm sure it's always going to be there out there waiting for you. It's just going to be a matter of time before we find it. I don't know. Like I said, I'm going to start doing a little bit more of these style I guess, shows on the channel, if you want to call it that. I'll have some shooting too. And I do want to show you guys this cool pistol that I acquired or was given to me by Sean Ryan. If you go check out his podcast, you guys will get a chance to see the pistol that I'm referring to, but I want to get out and give you guys a chance to see how she runs and how I'm liking it. So that may be in the next video or so. Look forward to seeing you guys there. I'm out.